welcome to DIY with Nancy. Today I'm going to be making homemade corn nuts. That's right, homemade corn nuts. In Portuguese we call them miltado. And they're usually salted, but really you can add any flavor or seasoning you'd like to these corn nuts. I'm not going to be roasting them. I am going to be using a oil base, very little, but I am going to be using an oil base. They're so flavorful, delicious, crunchy, and a perfect snack to have at home, handy, anytime you want it. So stay with me and watch how to make homemade corn nuts step by step. To get started, you'll need white corn, of course. And I have here a bag of 750 grams, which is 26 ounces. It says white corn right on it. Now, I purchased this at a local grocery store, which sells a lot of Portuguese items, but you can find this in any local grocery store. For the next step, I have here a large bowl with some cold water, and I just filled the water just halfway. I just want to make sure that the corn is completely covered once I place it in there. So I'm going to place the corn into the water, as you see. And now what you're going to do is you're going to place it somewhere cold for 24 hours. And so I'm just going to get this bowl, place it in a cold, in this case I'm going to place it in my garage. I have a sink in there. I'm going to place it into the sink, and after 24 hours, voila, here is the corn. Now the corn will be a little heavier, but you want to make sure that you wait about 24 hours, and I change the water once within those 24 hours. For the next step, I drained the water from the corn using a colander. So I just poured the water in my sink and used a colander just to hold the corn. Now I'm going to take the corn, and you can see I have a tablecloth on my counter here, and I'm simply going to separate the corn. Try not to overlap them because they are still wet and they have a lot of water moisture. So I'm going to just place them all on the tablecloth, just as I'm doing here. Now that I have all of the corn separated and laid out onto the tablecloth, I'm just making sure they're all separated and not overlapping each other. Now, even though I removed the water from the corn, they're still wet and they still have a little bit of water on it. So using a paper towel, you can see the water still on there, I'm going to dab the paper towel on the corn to remove the excess water. And I also do this just to prevent the corn nuts from getting soggy after you make them. Now, even though I dab the paper towel onto the corn to remove the excess water, I'm going to let it sit for about an hour because it is still wet. I can feel it in my hands, and let it dry out for another hour to remove any moisture that is on the corn. About an hour has passed, and the corn seems fairly dry. I'm going to take a small plate and place about 3 to 4 handfuls, as I'll be making the corn nuts in 4 to 5 separate batches. Next, I have a fryer here with about 3 cups of vegetable oil that you will need to fry the corn. And I'm also using a lid that covers the fryer perfectly, but if you have a splatter guard, by all means use it, because when you make the corn nuts, and if it does have a little bit more water or moisture in it, it's gonna pop right back at you. So please ensure that you stand back when you're making these corn nuts. Now I'm gonna simply place the corn nuts in the oil, and as soon as I do, the lid comes right on there. Stand back and wait until you hear, or stop hearing rather, the popping. I'm going to let you hear it for yourself. I do have my fan going while I'm making the corn nuts. It would be wise to keep it on while they're in the making. After after a few minutes, the popping will stop. At that point, it's safe to remove the lid or the safeguard. And I'm going to simply turn over the corn nuts so that way I can ensure that both sides have a nice golden brown color. Now the corn nuts can take anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes and you'll have a nice golden brown color just as you see here. You want to make sure you drain the oil from the corn nuts before you place it into a separate bowl with some paper towel. And on to the second batch. Now I like to make them in 4 or 5 batches because you don't want to have the corn overcrowding in the fry pan. So as you can see, it gives me more than ample room there to move them around and make sure that both sides have a nice golden brown color. The corn nuts are ready, they're still hot, and that's when you want to season your corn nuts. So for the seasoning, I'm using 2 ingredients. One is sugar, I'll explain that in a bit, and the traditional seasoning of salt. So as far as the seasoning for sugar, my mother suggested that I use sugar. When she used to make them back home, that's the seasoning she used, and when I made them and seasoned them with sugar, they taste so good. Absolutely must have of a seasoning, but we're going to use the salt as well. So let's get started with the seasoning. First, I'm going to remove the paper towel, no longer need that, and then I'm going to divide half the corn nuts into the small bowl so I can have half seasoning of sugar and half seasoning with salt. Okay, I'm going to start off by dividing the corn nuts into a small bowl. So that looks about half, right? Yeah, it's half. And I'm going to start off with the sugar seasoning. So I'm going to start off with a little bit at a time, toss it, and then I'm going to try it because you want to make sure the seasoning is perfect. Okay, you can use a little more sugar, but crunch is perfect. I'm going to toss it again. Make sure it's well coated with the sugar. And let's try it for seasoning again. It's perfect. No more. It's good. Now I normally place them in a small jar, have it sealed. It's good for at least 2-3 months. For now, I'm going to just place it into a nice dish, and I'm going to just separate it so I know which one is sugar and which one is salt. This one is the sugar corn nuts. Now we're going to get the next set of corn nuts salted with salt seasoning. So I'm going to place the salt into the bowl, just as I'm doing here, and do the same concept. You want to toss them to ensure that the salt is well coated on the corn nuts. Now once again, you want to try it for seasoning, and the seasoning is perfect. And all there's left to do is to place the salted corn nuts on a small dish. Here you have it, homemade corn nuts with 2 seasonings, one with sugar and the other with salt, but you can use any seasoning you'd like. You may use salt and pepper, some Cajun seasoning if you like your corn nuts spicy. However, this is the perfect snack. They're crunchy, delicious, and easy to make. That was my recipe on how to make homemade corn nuts. As you can see, they're very simple to make, but a couple tips you need to know when you're making the corn nuts. When you place the corn in the oil, make sure you place that lid right on there really quickly because you don't want the corn to pop all over you. Not that it's popcorn, but when it's in the oil, it expands and the moisture opens the corn nut. And you don't want it popping everywhere and you don't want the oil splattering everywhere. So make sure you keep that lid on. Make sure you're the only one in the kitchen just to be safe. But you know what? It's so worth it. They're so crunchy, delicious, and you have the salted corn nuts and the corn nuts with sugar. And let me tell you how I came up, well, actually I didn't come up with that idea. My mom suggested that I place sugar on the corn nuts. back home, she used to make corn nuts and they used to season them with sugar. And initially when she told me, I was like, sugar in corn nuts, really? Let me tell you, they're so delicious. I love the sugar corn nuts as well, just as much as I do the salted corn nuts. So I just hope you all enjoyed the homemade corn nuts recipe. And if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Take care. Nut and crunchy.